Okay. My name is Evan Weiner. My background is radio and TV. I was on as a regular with Sam Donaldson and his show back 20 years ago, and I've done other TV work. I've known Trump since 1983. I don't know Jimmy Kimmel. I dealt with Trump through his real estate stuff, through his USFL, through his boxing and other things. And Jimmy Kimmel has become a martyr for the First Amendment, freedom of speech. And he's back on. And the stations that suspended him, Sinclair and Nexstar, well, they folded the other day. I've done this talk 5 times in the last week. I've had to change it 5 times to keep up with things. Anyway, so that is Jimmy Kimmel and Donald Trump. Let's start with how you can censor somebody. And everyone in this room has the opportunity, if they want, to get somebody thrown off the air. And I'm going to read how you do it. FCC, Federal Communications Commission, their website. Federal law prohibits obscene, indecent, and profane content from being broadcast. That may seem to be clear enough, but determining what is obscene, indecent, and profane may mean some difficulty. In the 1964 Supreme Court landmark case on obscenity and pornography, the Justice Porter Stewart famously wrote, "I know it when I see it." Now, I am going to tell you about I know it when I see it. Anybody here from Rockland County? You are. What part of Rockland County?
New City.
New City. Oh, perfect then. Absolutely perfect. Town of Clarkstown. Town of Clarkstown. Right? New City. Okay, so 1971, I started my career. I was 15 years old at WRKL Radio doing a high school show called Tiger Talk. I was also working for the Nyack Journal News and the Bergen Record in Hackensack. So I'm kind of working as I'm going through high school. I was 15, I was at Spring Valley High School. In 1973, something happened in Clarkstown. The United States Supreme Court said that a local community could judge what is obscene and not. At WRKL at that time, there was a show called Hotline, which ran every day from 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And they had basically the same 12 callers who were complaining about everything going on. Paul Fromson was one of them. Another guy was Marty Snyder. Marty Snyder was 60 years old, a retired restaurateur, and he was retired because he was blind. Well, the town of Clarkstown decides we are going to have a 9-member obscenity committee. And guess who is the chairman of the 9-member obscenity committee? 60-year-old blind Marty Snyder. He's blind, but he's going to check out what pornography is, because in those days it was the movie I Am Curious Yellow or Linda Lovelace, one of those movies. And Marty Snyder, who's blind, said about pornography, "I know it when I see it." He couldn't see it. Anyway, this case, and this is a '64 Supreme Court case, still influences FCC rules today, and complaints from the public about broadcasting objectionable content drive the enforcement of those rules. In other words, if you know it when you see it and find it objectionable, you can tell the FCC and ask us to check it out. Factors in determining how FCC rules apply include the specific nature of the content, the time of day it was broadcast, and the context in which the broadcast took place. Broadcasting obscene content is prohibited by law at all times of the day. Indecent and profane content are prohibited on broadcast TV, and I'm going to get into this in a second, and radio between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. when there is a reasonable risk that children may be in the audience. This only applies to over-the-air TV, channels 2 through 69. And AM and FM radio. It does not apply to cable TV, does not apply to satellite radio, does not apply to the internet. It only applies to over-the-air TV and terrestrial radio. Now, in 1952, the TV operators knew that they had to do some phony baloney thing in order to keep the FCC away. So the TV owners came up with this, National Association of Broadcasters, Seal of Good Practice Television Code, which means we're going to regulate the industry, we don't want the FCC involved, and we're going to decide what good taste is, or what good taste should apply to the community. To preempt government censorship, the National Association of Broadcasters adopted the Code of Practices for Television Broadcasters, or the Television Code of 1952. The moral guidelines kind of mirrored what was going on in the movies with the Hays Code, or the Breen Code. Basically the same kind of principles applied to TV. The code outlined ethical standards for programming, forbidden profanity, negative portrayals of family or religious faith, illicit sex, substance abuse, excessive violence, and disrespect toward law enforcement. By the way, in the 1950s, talking about law enforcement shows, what was the most popular of all of them?
Dragnet.
Dragnet. Sergeant Friday.
Yes.
Right? Sergeant Friday. Oh, performers' attire and movements were also regulated to ensure decency. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I remember that guy. The code regulated how performers should dress and move within the bounds of decency. Further, news reporting was to be factual, fair, and without bias, and commentary and analysis should be clearly defined. American TV networks and stations have standards and practices. Those departments and the apt job description for those workers, censors. These departments are responsible for ensuring that all programming, excluding news broadcasts, adheres to legal requirements, policy guidelines, factual accuracy, and community standards. Their role encompasses reviewing everything from scripts and photographs to advertising, promotions, and the final broadcast programs. None of you remember this show. In fact, I will fall over if you remember this show. It's called the Mary Kay and Johnny Show.
No.
And it was on the Dumont Network. How many of you remember the Dumont Network? It was the 70th anniversary on September 20th, Channel 5. It's the 70th anniversary of the folding of the Dumont Network. Dumont had the great TVs.
They did.
They had great furniture pieces.
Alan B. Dumont.
Alan B. Dumont. He knew how to make a TV, but didn't know how to make a network.
Right, exactly.
And that was basically it. Anyway, that show was on the Dumont Network, and it is a landmark show on TV. That's Johnny Stearns up top, Mary Kay in the middle, and that's Christopher Stearns, the baby that was on the show. If you have never heard of Mary Kay Stearns, she quit the business about 73 years ago, and that was the last we ever saw Mary Stearns in showbiz. Anyway, before the TV Code, the first sitcom that depicted a married couple sharing a bed was arguably the first sitcom ever. Mary Kay and Johnny, which ran from 1947 to 1950, somehow managed to break ground. That was immediately seized back. It would not be until 1959 that another married couple would be seen in the same bed. Ozzie and Harriet, who had kids, right? David and Ricky on the show. They slept in the same bed. Now, this is why this was a groundbreaking show. In addition to portraying its stars who were married in real life, Mary Kay and Johnny Stearns, in the same bed, they were in the same bed. The series also was first to feature a pregnant woman after Mary Kay Stearns became pregnant in real life, forcing the team to write her condition into the show. After the child was born, Christopher Stearns became a regular on the show. Now, the Mary Kay and Johnny Show may have been seen by 7 people. That's about it. Dumont did not have really any traction. Back in 1947, there were only 44,000 television sets that were being used at the time. Now, here is Senator Joe McCarthy, red baiting.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have the code yet, but you have him starting on February 9th, 1950 in Wheeling, West Virginia, of all places, and the national media is in there, Wheeling, West Virginia, which at that point was a very rich city. It had the steel mills, it had the riverfront, and it had a lot of money. Today you go to Wheeling, West Virginia, and it looks like a comb with about 3 teeth still in the comb. It's just run down, totally run down. All the industry is out of there. Anyway, so he's talking about all these card-carrying communists in the State Department. Of course, he never produced one card-carrying communist in the State Department, but for about 3.5, 4 years, he's running around basically unchecked until Edward R. Murrow. During the McCarthy era, when the Wisconsin Senator Joseph McCarthy was without evidence accusing people of being a communist, CBS, Bill Paley's CBS, had employees taking loyalty oaths to the United States, 1950. 1951, CBS hired ex-FBI agents to tell its talent. I'm going to read this to you. How many of you grew up in the 1950s and watched TV?
Yeah.
Okay. So did I. I was born in 1956, but I definitely suffered. I definitely suffered, and you'll hear why. This is from Red Channels. This was a pamphlet that outed communists, so-called communists in the entertainment industry. I'm going to read this to you. Americans don't patronize Reds. You can drive the Reds out of television, radio, and Hollywood. And this track will tell you how. Why we must drive them out. The Reds have made our screen, radio, and TV Moscow's most effective fifth column in America. The Reds of Hollywood and Broadway have always been the chief financial support of communist propaganda in America. Our own films, made by Red producers, directors, writers, and stars, are being used by Moscow, in Asia, Africa, the Balkans, and throughout Europe to create a hatred of America. Right now, films are being made to craftily glorify Marxism. Hey, how many of you watched Chico, Harpo, Groucho, and even Zeppo?
Yeah,
Didn't that glorify Marxism?
Yes.
Sure. I think they're talking about a different Marx, though. I think they're talking about Karl Marx.
Yes,
I think so. And UNESCO and Worldism, and via your TV set, they're being piped into your living room. And they are poisoning the minds of your children under your very eyes. So remember, if you're patronizing a film made by Red producers, writers, and stars and studios, you are aiding and abetting communism. Every time you permit the Reds to come into your living room via your TV set, you are having Moscow and the internationalists help destroy America. So how many of you besides me were poisoned?
Poison?
Yeah, poisoned by TV.
Well, I don't
They
know.
said you were poisoned.
No way.
I was poisoned.
You
I
were
know I was
poisoned?
poisoned. Oh yeah. Yeah, I watched TV back in the 1950s. Anyway, this is what happens shortly afterwards. Dumont dumped the Hazel Scott show in 1950. Anybody know who Hazel Scott was?
No.
Great pianist.
Oh,
She
that's
could
right.
she could play like
That's right.
this.
Yeah.
She was born in Trinidad and Tobago, moved to Harlem when she was 4 years old. By the time she was a teenager, she had a show on WOR radio. She was a child prodigy. She also was working in Greenwich Village at the Cafe Society, which was an alleged communist hangout. Anyway, she decides, I'm going to clear my name before the House Un-American Activities Committee in a hearing. Her husband was the Congressman Adam Clayton Powell II. And he said, don't go. Just ignore it. Don't go. She said, I got to clear my name. No, don't go. You're going to destroy your career if you go. Hazel Scott does testify on September 22nd. She was the first African American ever to host a network TV show. The show started July 3rd, 1950. It ended September 29th, 1 week after she testified. She was not a communist, but she played the piano at New York's Cafe Society in Greenwich Village in the 1950s, rather 1930s, which allegedly was a communist hangout, but she was not a communist. She happened to be in the vicinity, perhaps, of communists, and that was her undoing. Pregnancy was a TV problem. How many women here were pregnant?
I certainly was.
You were. So, yeah. Any problems, with pregnancy?
No.
But in 1952 America, on TV, you couldn't be pregnant. She was not the first woman on TV who was pregnant. That was Mary Kay Stearns.
First big one.
But she was the first big one. Lucy and Desi almost ended I Love Lucy after they found out she was going to have a second baby. First one was Lucy Arnaz. In 1952 America, it was considered racy for a visible woman who was visibly pregnant on TV. Television had censorship. Lucy and Desi were not allowed to say the word pregnant. Although a woman about 5 years ago who was bilingual told me when she watched the shows where Lucy was pregnant, Desi did say the word pregnant in Spanish. But the censors only knew English. So he was allowed to say pregnant all he wanted to in Spanish. That guy on the left is Jesse Oppenheimer. He is the showrunner. He's the writer for the show, the idea guy. He's looking adoringly at Lucy, and there is Desi looking at them saying, what's going on here? I thought, I'm the only one allowed to cheat. Anyway, Oppenheimer, the show producer and head writer, had an idea. He suggested writing Lucy's pregnancy into the show. Now, as far as they were concerned, a visibly pregnant woman had never appeared on stage or television before, so this was a big risk for all concerned. Lucy, Desi, and Oppenheimer from the creative end. CBS and the show's sponsor, Philip Morris, the cigarette manufacturer. But there was that Mary Kay and Johnny show, which they either forgot about or ignored, and there was a precedent about a pregnant woman on TV. The storyline would work. CBS allowed Lucy to appear on screen during her pregnancy, and some of the scripts did address the topic. However, the executives at CBS didn't want to stir the pot all that much, and they said tone it down somewhat, and you know what, if you can, shoot Lucy from the head up so you couldn't see that she was pregnant. Well, there's Lucy and there's Desi. And this is according to Lucy in her book. In the early fall, when I was beginning to look pretty big, we did 7 shows concerning my pregnancy. These films were screened by a priest, a minister, and a rabbi for any possible violation of good taste. It was the CBS network that objected to using the word pregnant. They made us say expecting. What's the difference? What's the difference? By the way, this is 1952. This is 1 week in 1952. Lucille Ball got 60, or the Lucy Show, I Love Lucy Show, got 66% of the television audience with her show. Colgate Comedy Hour got 63%. Arthur Godfrey had 2 shows. Milton Berle, Texaco Star Theater. Here's one I never heard of, Life with Luigi.
Never heard of it.
But it got nearly 60% of the viewer, or 57% of the viewership. Pabst Blue Ribbon bouts, boxing matches,
Yes.
gangbusters, and Richard Nixon saying, I'm not a crook that week. I'm not a crook to Nixon. The Nixon speech, he's not a crook. He got about half the country. So, a priest, a minister, and a rabbi, they walk into a room and watch a TV show, according to Lucy. The three-man religious committee had not protested. What's wrong? We're pregnant. They were hardly in favor of what we were doing, showing motherhood as a happy, wholesome, normal family event. Is there something wrong with that picture, by the way, besides being in color?
Yes.
What? No, she's not pregnant.
Oh, she's not
She's
pregnant?
not pregnant.
Oh, dear.
No. Anything looking a bit askance in that picture? Lucy's wearing pants.
Oh,
She's wearing pants.
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 You can't tell.
Well, yeah, you can see it's pants. She's wearing pants. During I Love Lucy's second season, 52-53, Lucy was pregnant. She could not do the entire 39-episode production schedule and she would miss programs. At that point, TV, you just show the program once, and that created a problem because nobody thought anybody would watch a show a second time. Little did they know, you can watch all 180 of them now on Pluto TV if you want to binge watch them. Anyway, Desi and the producer, Jess Oppenheimer, came up with an unusual idea. Rebroadcast some episodes from the first season. The reruns were rating winners and created a new area for TV syndicated revenue. They got lucky too. The FCC took the freeze off of television station licenses. In 1952, hundreds of TV stations came on, and people who heard about I Love Lucy could finally see it in 1952. There were no TV stations in their area in 1951, like San Francisco didn't have a TV station. Desi Lou went on to invent the concept of the rerun and use the profits from the I Love Lucy show syndication to fund the growth of their studio. Lucy and Desi were the first TV millionaires, and you know who the third one was?
Liberace.
Liberace. Yeah, I wish my brother George was here. Liberace. He made tons of money with the Liberace show.
Candelabra.
Yeah, the candelabra, and he wasn't wearing the wild outfits yet.
No.
Oh, remember I talked about Lucy's pants? There's Mary Tyler Moore. Obscene or not obscene?
Very fast.
Is that obscene or not obscene?
Not obscene.
It's not obscene, but if that's CBS, it was considered obscene. How dare a woman wear a pair of pants during a show? It wasn't normal. During the early days of American TV, it was uncommon for women to wear pants, especially in primetime, because it was largely considered unacceptable for women to wear pants in public during that era. How many of you came of age in the 1960s or 50s? How many of you wore pants? Women.
I don't think I did.
You probably didn't, because it wasn't until the late 60s that women, it was acceptable for them to wear pants on a daily basis.
Yeah, I guess so.
Everybody wore skirts, right?
Yeah.
Okay, societal norms valued modesty and femininity, and pants were viewed as masculine and rebellious for women. How many women here were rebellious? You were, so you wore a pair of pants.
I did it, baby.
Yeah, made
I
you,
wore shorts all the way to college.
well, it made you rebellious. Real rebellious.
Yeah.
Lucille Ball wore pants occasionally on I Love Lucy, as did Vivian Vance. And then again, who's going to tell Lucy, who's making tons of money for CBS, and Philip Morris, you can't wear pants? Who's going to tell him? Nobody.
You're right.
Nobody. But Mary Tyler Moore on Dick Van Dyke, that show was the first woman to wear pants consistently, and that caused problems for CBS. The sitcom Housewife in 1961 really had its classical parameters and dimensions. Mary Tyler Moore told NPR's Terry Gross in 1995. They were established, and they hardly ever varied. All of these wives were kind of obedient, you know, representative of the vows to love, honor, and obey. And there she is. She's dancing in pants. Dancing in pants. You can't do that on TV in 1961, could you? No, of course not. But she did. The resistance to Laura Petrie in pants didn't come from the show's creator, Carl Reiner. CBS objected because she, or maybe her butt, looked too good.
Oh.
Mary was of the day, Reiner said. I remember I said, that's what the modern woman should be doing now. What was the big deal? Anybody ever hear of the term cupping?
What?
Cupping. C-U-P-P-I-N-G. You got it, right there.
Yeah.
Right there. He's going like this.
I know.
He's going like that.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know, that's obscene. I can throw you out for that. Anyway, yeah, I had another guy who once did this with Dagmar.
Yeah, I know. They're copying.
Yeah, cupping. So anyway, that is how defined Moore's pants were in the rear. You can see her butt cheeks. And that was a problem on TV. But, talk about problems. Now, how many of you watch Gilligan's Island?
Yeah, we watched.
Gilligan's Island. Do you ever think that show, which is a stupid show, that ran 3 seasons, stupid, dumb little show about these 7 castaways not being able to get off an island where they were visited many times.
Right.
But anyway, so do you think Gilligan's Island would cause problems? What do you think, yes or no?
Maybe.
Too much belly button.
Oh, my goodness.
Too
look
much
at that.
belly button.
Tina Louise, you know?
Yeah, Tina Louise, who's still alive, and reads to underprivileged kids every week in Manhattan.
Really?
She's 91, 92 years old,
Ooh.
so she's still around. Anyway, too much belly button. That is a problem. In the mid-1960s, belly buttons were forbidden on American television, so much so that Don Wells and Tina Louise on Gilligan's Island and Barbara Eden, who recently celebrated her 94th birthday, on I Dream of Jeannie, would have their belly buttons censored. Tina Louise wore dresses designed to be form-fitting and stylish, but the costumes were created to avoid showing overt cleavage. Sherwood Schwartz created Gilligan's Island, also created the Brady Bunch, and there is a story about him going out to dinner with his wife, and she asked him, well, how was the day on the set? And he said, between Tina's cleavage and Don's belly button, I could get no rest. CBS censors would come to Gilligan's Island, the set, in the name of enforcing broadcasting standards. Make sure there's no belly button. Like Barbara Eden, make sure there's no belly button. How many of you watched I Dream of Jeannie?
I did.
It's another stupid show. I mean, it's a fantasy show. You know, that's all it is. I mean, it has no depth, none whatsoever. Astronaut finds a genie in a bottle, and you know, he's the master now. Anyway, Barbara Eden wore a costume with high-waist pants that went above the navel. But in early episodes, noted Eden years later, the pants would ride down from time to time and reveal her belly button for the camera. No one at NBC cared, except there was an article in the Hollywood Reporter. And basically, the guy who wrote the article wanted to know, what about the navel? Why don't we see it? Remember Rowan and Martin's laughing?
Yes, it
Okay. They were ready to do something. They planned to do a sketch where they would dramatically unveil her belly button to the world. And the network finally made an official decision about belly buttons.
Right.
No belly buttons on network shows. That is the second interracial kiss in television history in the United States. You know who the first one was? Lucy and Desi.
Oh.
They were an interracial
Oh,
couple.
yeah, that's right.
They were an interracial couple.
Right.
By the way, this show, Star Trek, well, she created it. She put up the money for it. When nobody else wanted to do it, she did. And by the time this show went on, she had sold Desi Lou to a company that we used to refer to as Engulf and Devour, Gulf and Western. She sold the whole studio for $17 million.
Wow.
And today that's worth lots. No, it's worth probably $500 billion, somewhere around there. Yeah. Anyway, so that's William Shatner. That's Nichelle Nichols. The first turlet on TV, Tank was shown and was seen in a 1957 episode of Leave It to Beaver. Wait a minute, did you ever think Leave It to Beaver would have something as controversial as a toilet that you saw? Well, it was there because they had to hide an alligator. In 1971, on All in the Family, Archie flushed the turlet bowl, and everybody heard it. The first intentional interracial kiss was on Star Trek. That was November 22nd, 1968. NBC was concerned that its southern affiliates could not handle the scene between Captain Kirk, William Shatner, and Lieutenant Uhura, Nichelle Nichols. By the way, Nichelle Nichols wanted to quit the show. She felt that she wasn't being used. And Martin Luther King heard about that and sent her a letter saying, don't you dare, you're making history. It was only Diane Carroll and her really on TV or females during that period of time, the late 60s. Well, Martha Roundtree was the inventor of Meet the Press. And Martha Roundtree and I have one thing in common. She worked at the Mutual Broadcasting System in 1945, where she developed the show. And I worked for Mutual Radio in the late 1980s when we were closing the doors and shutting off the lights. But a woman came up with the idea of Meet the Press in a man's world. In those days, it was a man's world. Starting in 1952, news reporting was to be factual, fair, and without bias. And commentary and analysis should be clearly defined as such. There were news reports on network TV starting in 1946 on the Dumont Network. Dumont was the first TV network in the United States. Meet the Press moved to TV on November 6, 1947, after 2 years on Mutual Broadcast System or Mutual Radio Network. Now, CBS has been doing news in some form since the Channel 2 days at Grand Central Terminal on July 1st, 1941. How many of you remember this guy, John Cameron Swayze?
Oh, yeah.
He looks like the perfect news anchor.
Camel cigarettes.
Yeah, Camel cigarettes.
Yeah.
I knew him, no, his son.
He did a
Timex.
Yeah,
It took a licking, but kept on ticking.
Yes,
It fell off.
exactly.
Yeah. He had it on tractors, he had it all over. Hey, let's see if this thing still works.
He had it on the boat like water, and that fell off.
Yeah.
That was a classic.
Yeah. But he is, good-looking guy, dressed well, got a carnation, the first anchor, real anchor on TV. The makers of Camel cigarettes bring the world's latest news events right into your living room. Sit back, light up a Camel, and be an eyewitness to the happenings that made history in the last 24 hours. R.J. Reynolds handed its own news production over to NBC, with the company choosing the name of its new nightly news show and its face, John Cameron Swayze. It began on February 16, 1945. It was a 15-minute show. John Cameron Swayze would smoke during the show. And it would run at 7:45 Eastern Time, 6:45 Central Time. Swayze and the Camel News Caravan pioneered a news format that is still used today.
Wow.
Now, here's the censorship. Now, can you censor news? Yeah, you can. And here's the censorship that R.J. Reynolds imposed on NBC. NBC News reports were not allowed to show no smoking signs.
Wow.
Yeah, that made sense because it was, Camel cigarettes. The only news figure permitted to see smoking a cigar was Winston Churchill. Oh, NBC asked R.J. Reynolds if he could broadcast special news reports when the Korean War broke out in 1950. Advertisers said no. Why? We don't want to. And that was that. Camel had, or R.J. Reynolds did have a history of censorship. 1939 World's Fair. Eddie Cantor, remember Eddie Cantor, making whoopee. If you knew Susie like I knew Susie,
Yes.
What a gal.
oh, what a gal. He knew her real well, didn't he? He knew all of her, everything about
If you
her.
knew Susan.
If you knew Susie like I knew Susie. And every guy wants to know Susie the same way. Anyway, Cantor denounced the anti-Semitic radio personality Father Charles Coughlin. And that was dropped by his radio sponsor, Camel Cigarettes, and lost his radio show.
Wow.
Camel decided we probably have more smokers with Father Coughlin, and who needs Cantor around? And they got rid of him. Now, Cantor would return to radio in 1940, only after Jack Benny vouched for him.
Oh, wow.
Jack Benny was 46 years old, Cantor probably the same age, and basically Benny said if he does anything wrong, it'll be my responsibility. That was what, radio was about. That's Bill Paley, CBS. William Paley, founder of CBS Radio and TV, and a guy who worried too much about integrity because he had none. This is Don Hewitt. It was Don Hewitt. How many of you watched 60 Minutes?
All the time.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was the guy that put together 60 Minutes. Don Horowitz. And I asked him one day. I said, "How'd you come up before me?" So it was easy. It took 2 Ed Morrow shows. the person-to-person show, and the See It Now show, and combined it. And that was basically it. And Morrow had to do that other show, which he hated, to pay the bills for See It Now. Anyway, Bill Paley erected two towers of power. One for entertainment, one for news. The 60 Minutes creator Don Hewitt said in his autobiography, Tell Me a Story. And he decreed that there would be no bridge between them. In short, Paley was the guy who put Frank Sinatra and Edward R. Morrow on the radio and 60 Minutes on television. And forgive me if I refer to Morrow as Ed, but I knew a lot of people who knew him, including Mrs. Ruth Friendly, who is now 100 years old,
Wow.
who is giving a talk in White Plains in a couple of weeks about journalism. She was the wife of his partner, Fred Friendly. And she taught at Columbia University until she was 95. And what stopped her? COVID. She wouldn't go in because she was 95 years old with COVID in 2020. Anyway, there is Ed. Morrow was approached to host a weekly TV program, along with his associate, Fred Friendly. Morrow had been producing a popular radio show, Hear It Now. The television show was to be called See It Now. Television was in its infancy, and Morrow and Friendly had to learn the process of filmmaking and the primitive television equipment on the job. CBS put that out, See It Now, partly about Joe McCarthy appearing on the show in April of 1954. A report on Senator Joseph McCarthy is a landmark television show that Ed and Fred and others did. In fact, Hewitt was part of it as well, back on March 9, 1954. And Bill Paley is scared of this show. Morrow was not a journalist by trade. He was sent to Europe to do something else, and London was being bombed every night, and somebody had to do the radio broadcast. This is London, and it was Ed, and Ed developed this integrity that very few people in the journalism business have ever had or was successful at. Anyway, so they should build a shrine to him other than in the CBS hallway at 57th Street. Paley said you can't use any money to promote the show, nor can you use the CBS-I logo. The show used McCarthy's words against him. McCarthy faced off against Morrow on April 6, 1954, and that was the beginning of the end of Joe McCarthy. This is the slide that Ed is serious and the alcoholic. McCarthy has a smirk on his face. After this would come the military hearings and the at last have you no decency, and then the censure, and basically it was discovered that McCarthy was an alcoholic. McCarthy had two lawyers, by the way, who worked for him. Roy Cohn was one and Bobby Kennedy was the other. McCarthy dated two of Joe Kennedy's daughters. So there is that history that has been buried about the Kennedy family and McCarthy. Paley is looking at this. He says, holy cow, what did Ed just do? Ed did something and showed the power of TV. And he was afraid because his radio and TV stations were licensed by the government. If somebody got upset in the government, his cash cows could be gone. So all of a sudden, he's trying to get Morrow to tune it down. Morrow had complained to Paley he could not continue doing the show if the network repeatedly provided equal time to subjects who felt wronged by the program. Those days there was a fairness doctrine, and if you felt wronged by a program, you could petition somebody and get your voice heard. By 1960, Ed had enough and left. One of the people working for him on this show, which was called The Harvest of Shame, which was about the plight of the American migrant agricultural workers, was Howard K. Smith. This show, you can watch it today on YouTube. And all you have to do is colorize it, put a different voice on it, and nothing has changed in 65 years. Absolutely nothing has changed. Again, a landmark show. But this is his last show he's had. Ruth Friendly asked me one day, do you know the story about Howard K. Smith? I said, well, I have heard pieces of it. And she went on to explain it to me, and I am going to explain it to you. Howard K. Smith was canned at CBS because of a television show, and it came down to money as well. And Mrs. Friendly, Ruth Friendly, is giving that talk in a couple of weeks over in White Plains at the age of 100. This is what basically what she told me. Howard K. Smith was a CBS News correspondent covering the riots in Birmingham, Alabama during the Civil Rights Revolution in the early 1960s. The show was to be called Who Speaks for Birmingham? Now, Ed started the show, and Howard K. Smith, upon learning that Ed was leaving, said to him, is that it for the show, or should we continue doing it? And Ed said, why would you stop? And they did it. It was started by Ed, but he left to work for the Kennedy administration. Smith took over the production. After giving an account of blood flowing in the streets, Smith ended his planned documentary with a quotation from Edmund Burke. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Wow. Yeah, that's wow, isn't it? Yeah. That's exactly what Paley said. And all of a sudden, Ruth Friendly told me Howard K. Smith is brought to New York to see Bill Paley. And she was part of it. The network power summoned Smith to New York. He was told his commentary violated standards of objectivity. CBS Chairman William Paley said, I've heard all this junk before. If that's what you believe, you better go elsewhere. Whoa. And then Ruth Friendly added, Howard K. Smith said, does this mean I'm fired? And Paley said, yes, you are. And it's partly a business decision. The show was heavily edited because he didn't want to offend anybody in the South. Remember, this is 1961. The Freedom Riders on the bus. Their bus is bombed in May of 1961. But the show is heavily edited. And back in the day in Birmingham, you really only had two networks to choose from if you were a TV station owner. That would be CBS and NBC. ABC was kind of half a network. But the people who ran the Birmingham station were so incensed that somebody was doing a documentary on Jim Crow that they told CBS, we don't like your network. You had the nerve to almost put that show on. Smith was hired by ABC. Remember I talked about dress and movements?
Yes.
Now, Jerry Stiller was my cousin. Wow. Stiller and Mirror appeared on the Ed Sullivan Show 36 times. So they knew Ed well, and they had something in common with Ed. Ed was Irish, his wife Sylvia was Jewish. Jerry was Jewish, and Ann was Irish, who converted to being Jewish and was president of her local Hadassah group at one time. Wow. Anyway, I loved Ann. Ann was great. Ann was really, I mean, she kept Jerry together, but knowing my family, I can understand how the women kept the men together. And look at him. Look at him. Anyway, yell a lot. Anyway, so there's Elvis. So how many of you liked Elvis?
We did.
Hey, you did?
Yeah.
You don't like this? You like that? Like that? Well, was Elvis a bad influence or not? What do you think? Was he a bad influence or not?
No, political.
How many say no? How many say yes? Okay, but you're right. Multiple people thought he was a bad influence. Ed Sullivan, before I go on, Jerry and I were talking one day about Sullivan, and Jerry said Ed was all about money. If he can make money, he'll put anybody on the show. Anybody. Ed Sullivan grappled with the challenges of network censorship, sponsorship threats, and his own personal beliefs and views. Elvis was considered a bad influence on youngsters. Ed said he would never invite Elvis to his variety show. But Elvis's soaring popularity made Sullivan recant, because he saw the dollar signs out there, because Ed could make money from Elvis being on the show. Elvis made 3 appearances on the show. After the second appearance, where you got to see him go like that, his swiveling hips were deemed too raunchy by CBS censors, And for the third and final performance, Elvis was filmed only from the waist up. He finished a 3-appearance deal. He got the most money ever from Sullivan, even more than the Beatles did. And never appeared again on the show following his January 6, 1957 performance. How many of you remember The Doors with Jim Morrison? Okay, Light My Fire. Light My Fire. And you can see the back there. They got what? But it's, yeah, but it's Light My Fire. That's the problem. Yeah, L.A. Woman. But Light My Fire is the problem. It is the big problem here. And there's the Doors and the Doors behind them. 1963, CBS executives requested Bob Dylan either change the choice of song or lyrics. The song, Talking John Burke's Paranoid Blues. Dylan replied, if I can't play my song, I'd rather not appear on the show, and never did. Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger agreed to change the lyrics of his and Keith Richards' song, Let's Spend the Night Together. Is that a song that offended anybody? Let's Spend the Night Together? Well, it offended Sullivan and his censors. To Let's Spend Some Time Together. And if you see the video today, you would watch Mick rolling his eyes on camera as he sung the lyric. Jim Morrison, the Doors vocalist, while singing live the song Light My Fire, performed the song his way, regardless of the censorship request. The hit song with the lyrics, Girl, we couldn't get much higher, was thought to be unacceptable and unsuitable for primetime television at the time, thus the request for the lyric change. Jim Morrison is seen during the Sullivan performance not only ignoring the request, but screaming the lyrics, higher! It was the Doors' last appearance on the show. Why would you ban Aretha Franklin? Why would you ban Aretha Franklin?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I'm fat.
No, Sullivan was good to black performers. Louis Armstrong, Sammy Davis Jr. No, she wasn't fat at that time.
The Catholic Church influenced Sullivan.
Maybe, I don't know. I've never heard about the League of Decency with Sullivan. But, okay, let's talk about Aretha Franklin. Aretha Franklin gave an account of being pulled from Sullivan's lineup for her low-cut dress because it showed too much cleavage. Aretha claimed that the show's execs asked her to change her dress because it was too revealing, to which she complied. However, her alternate dress was apparently also not up to the show's standards. Aretha was scrapped from next Sunday night's episode. Ingrid Bergman never appeared on the Sullivan Show, but Ed got her back into proper society. How many of you know Ingrid Bergman?
Yeah, we know. Sure.
Okay. If I ask out a 22-year-old crowd, nobody would know. Nobody would know. Ingrid Bergman never appeared on Sullivan's show. Bergman was married to a doctor with whom she had a daughter, but embarked on an affair with a then also married Italian director, Roberto Rossellini. The affair would lead to a long period of censorship for years to come, and even a bill introduced in Congress to ban American films that featured actors guilty of immorality, lewdness, and moral turpitude. Now, if that bill had passed, how many movies would have been made?
Zero.
None. None. Sullivan wanted her on the show. Ed's request to put her on the program turned her image around. The Big Beat in Jim Crow. Alan Freed. How many of you remember Alan Freed?
Of course.
Okay, well, the early days of rock and roll was filled with juvenile delinquency, band shows, live shows in New Jersey, up in Boston, and a lot of it involved Alan Freed. And there was a lot of censorship of rock and roll. Elvis. No, Alan Freed was well known around the country. Yeah, he promoted shows. Anyway, it is May 4th, 1957. The Big Beat with Alan Freed becomes the first nationally televised rock and roll dance show. ABC TV was looking for a summer replacement, and it would continue into the 57-58 TV season if it attracted an audience, which it did. The TV show featured a live performance by Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers. I'm not going to be a juvenile delinquent. Goody, goody.
Yeah.
Anyway, Lyman was showed dancing with a white girl.
Wow.
And that's the end of the show.
Yeah.
As it. He showed dancing with a white girl. The dance scene enraged ABC's Southern affiliates, which weren't many, and the network canceled the program. But it did open the door for another show out of Philadelphia called Bandstand with Dick Clark. How many of you watched the Smothers Brothers comedy hour? Yeah. So how many of you would have voted for Dick Nixon if you were Smothers Brothers? No way. If you were, I knew Dick Nixon. Anyway, I'll tell you the story later. Anyway, here's the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour. Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour ended on April 4th, 1969, when the CBS boss, William Paley, canceled the program. There were 72 shows. The Comedy Hour was one of the few primetime shows featuring any political commentary. In fact, it was one of two. The other one was Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, and you'd have to go back at that point a number of years, about 3 or 4 years, to NBC's That Was the Week That Was, which was brought over from England. Oh, look at Paley. Look at him. Probably just got word that Nelson Rockefeller and Babs Paley were found together in bed, which they were. But Bill probably didn't care because he was likely to be found in bed with somebody else at that point. Bill Paley. Anyway, before I go on with this, you know Johnny Carson, right?
Yes.
Okay. How many of you went to bed with Johnny Carson?
Wow.
How many of you went to bed with Johnny Carson?
Watching.
Yeah. You were in bed watching him, right?
Oh, he's dead watching.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Was he good?
It was good.
He was very good.
Very
Even with
good.
your 10 toes up? Even with your 10 toes. In January 1968, Carson is looking at what's going on in the country. Well, what you got going on in the country is the demonstrations against the Vietnam War, the Civil Rights Movement, and the New Women's Movement.
Right.
And he thought the country needed to have a conversation about it.
Wow.
And he turned to a guest to host Harry Belafonte. And that week he had Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King on. He had Senator Robert Kennedy on. He had Buffy St. Marie on. He had Aretha Franklin on. He had Paul Newman was on as well. And they spent 5 90-minute shows talking about what is going on in the country. But as it was in those days, you videotaped the show, you kept it for a couple weeks, and then you taped over the show because the tapes were expensive and hard to store.
Right.
So nothing exists of those shows except some written transcript and some pictures of Harry Belafonte and Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King and Paul Newman sitting next to him with Ed on sitting on the couch. It is a lost opportunity because it was a piece of its time. I bring that up with Harry Belafonte because he is supposed to be the first guest of the 1968-69 Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour show. And he's got a 5-minute set where he's doing a song called Lord Don't Stop the Carnival against the backdrop of riots of the Chicago 1968 Democratic National Convention, along with 2 lines from a satire of their main competitor, Bonanza. What, Hoss say, Paw up sing didn't make the soup hot enough? CBS and Paley not only cut out the number completely, but to add insult to injury, they replaced it with a 5-minute campaign ad from the Republican presidential nominee, Mia.
Wow.
Again, how many Smothers Brothers watchers are going to vote for Dick Nixon?
Zero.
There might be a few here or there, but basically not many. And this is what you got for 5 minutes. Nixon's the one. It's March 9th, 1969, and CBS decides to run a rerun of an old Smothers Brothers show, replacing a show which Joan Baez talked about her husband David Harris, who is entering jail after refusing military service. Snip, gotta get rid of that. And the comedian Jackie Mason, who told a joke about children playing doctor. I really wish the last time I saw Jackie Mason, which was on 57th Street, he's walking out of the Carnegie Towers, and I'm walking by him, and I tell my wife, I think I should say hello. And he's looking, hearing this. And because I'm friends with a lot of comedians. And he's looking at this. And I said, nah. Walk by him. And he's like, anything. You know, Jackie Mason should have avoided Sunday night CBS shows. Remember, Ed Sullivan fired him for going like that. Remember that? And he's cut from the Smothers Brothers show, those Sunday night shows. But there's David Steinberg. And do you know anything about his background? No. Okay, he was a comedian, a writer, and he became a director. Well, he grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, the son of a rabbi. And he sat through many a sermon, I would assume, when he was a kid. So Tommy Smothers and Mason Williams, who was the chief writer, decided, why don't we do David Steinberg sermons? He knows how to do them. His father did them forever. Battles continued over content, including a David Steinberg sermon about Moses and the burning bush, which was about a different burning bush. It was that Steinberg skit that pushed CBS to cancel the show. The brothers would sue and ultimately win and get a settlement, but they never had that kind of platform again, even though they were on 1974 on ABC. They just really didn't get an audience. Yeah. The reason I know Dick Nixon is because of those two, Julie and David Eisenhower. 1985, when I was working at NBC/Mutual Radio, there was a Major League Baseball umpires dispute. The umpires were ready to go on strike. And Richie Phillips, who just passed away earlier this year, was the head of the Umpires Association, and they're getting nowhere in the talks with Major League Baseball owners. So Richie makes a call, and he calls Peter Ueberroth, the baseball commissioner, and says, hey, why don't we get arbitration? Who do you got in mind? Dick Nixon. Dick Nixon, get out of here. Where'd you find him? Well, he's next door babysitting. He was next door babysitting. Richie lived in Society Hill in Philadelphia off the main line, and his next door neighbors were Julie and David Eisenhower. And can you imagine, Nixon leaves Park Ridge, New Jersey, and takes the 1 hour and 45-minute trip down the Garden State Parkway, and the Jersey Turnpike goes over the Walt Whitman Bridge, and he's there babysitting. Can you imagine Dick and Pat babysitting? I want you to put down that toy right now. Let me make this perfectly clear. Let me say this about that. You don't put those toys away, Henry Kissinger's going to throw you in jail. That's how I got to know him, Drew. He was the arbitrator, gave the umpires a 40% raise, and after that, I would see him occasionally. And one day I saw him, I said, good morning, Mr. President, how are you? And he looked at me, he said, no, Evan, he knew my name. No, Evan, call me Dick. And after that, it was always Dick Nixon. There he is. Nixon pushed for greater governmental control of broadcast media. At the same time, well-placed Nixon allies, from CBS programming chief Robert D. Wood to TV guide publisher Walter Annenberg, adopted hardline stances against the Smothers Brothers. Now, over-the-air TV and radio, to make your money, you need a license. And you don't want to go around getting people like Dick Nixon too upset at you because they can pull your license. Nixon would threaten to revoke TV or radio station licenses from owners that he viewed as the enemy. Newspapers had no restrictions. Spiro Agnew, the very corrupt vice president of the United States who was accepting kickbacks in the White House long after he was Maryland governor from Lyndon Nance, well, he declares war on broadcast news. It is November 13, 1969. He's in Des Moines, Iowa, and Vice President Spiro Agnew accuses network TV news departments of bias and distortion. They were going after CBS and NBC. Perhaps the place to start looking for a credibility gap is not in the offices of the government in Washington, but in the studios of the networks in New York. The guy on the right there is Pat Buchanan. And to show you the hypocrisy of political figures, Pat Buchanan made most of his money off of cable television news. He made most of his money after this from news, TV news. And there's Dick Nixon, of course. He wrote the anti-news speech. And this is William Safire, the darling of the New York Times editorial page, particularly with his word editorials. And he wrote the Nadering Nabobs of Negativism speech, Buchanan and Safire. The Nixon White House strategy, declare war on the American news media. Former St. Louis Post-Dispatch writer Patrick Buchanan and William Safire stoked the flames. Safire wrote the Nadering Nabobs of Negativism, words for Agnew, and he went on to write a column for the New York Times. So these guys were trying to submarine the news, and they go and, okay, we're done. How much money are you going to offer me? They took the money. Daniel Shore, remember him?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a CBS News correspondent and the first guy Ted Turner hired at CNN. The Nixon enemy list was the informal name of what started out as a list of the President of the United States, Dick Nixon's major political opponents, compiled by Charles Colson. Like, had nothing better to do. Written by George T. Bell, assistant to Colson, special counsel to the White House, sent in memorandum form to White House counsel John Dean on September 9th, 1971. CBS newsman Shore was on that list, as was Paul Newman. And why was Paul Newman on that list?
Oh, no.
He marched with the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in the South, and that's what got him on the list. In 2008, released transcripts of Dick Nixon's Oval Office tapes, and Nixon talking about, well, the press is the enemy, the establishment's the enemy, the professors are the enemy. Many of you remember Abby Hoffman.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
Abby Hoffman. Take a look at the shirt he's wearing.
Yeah, I know.
American flag shirt.
American flag.
Yeah, American flag shirt. How many of you remember Merv Griffin?
Yeah.
Merv. Merv was a rock rib Republican through and through. But if you watch Merv on TV, would you have ever known that?
No.
The answer is no. The answer is no.
No.
No, not at all. CBS was uncomfortable with the guests Merv wanted, who often spoke out against the Vietnam War. When political activist Abby Hoffman was Merv's guest in April 1970, CBS blurred the video of Hoffman so viewers at home would not see his trademark American flag pattern shirt, even though other guests like Roy Rogers had worn the same shirt in the past uncensored. Merv disliked the censorship that was imposed upon him. He had a free rein when he was in syndication. And he said, I don't need this headache. I'm the boss in syndication. So I went back to syndication. He was also working, getting money from a TV show that starred Art Fleming and Don Pardo. You might have heard of Jeopardy.
Jeopardy.
He created Jeopardy.
Yes.
Wow.
And he was also creating some other show at that point,
Yes.
Wheel of Fortune.
Yes. Wheel of Fortune.
He was busy.
Yeah.
He was busy. CBS was no longer Tiffany. I mean, they put us in the studio at 57th Street, and they bought our what we were doing. They bought it, and they handed, you know. And this was the day that CBS went downhill. The day they gave me an identification card was the last day that they were relevant. Would you hire me in the news division? Hell no. Yeah, you're right. Anyway, this is Dr. Frank Stanton, and he was the CBS president. Remember these words, because they come back in 2025. CBS President Dr. Frank Stanton was threatened with jail in 1971. CBS had broadcast an hour-long investigation report called The Selling of the Pentagon, about a $30 million, which would be $231 million today, campaign by the Defense Department to improve its image. I wonder why the Defense Department needed to improve its image. Maybe it was the Vietnam War?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
The House Interstate and Foreign Commerce Committee demanded that he turn the material over from the program. When he refused, he was called before the committee. If newsmen are told their notes, films, and tapes will be subjected to compulsory process so the government can determine whether the news has been satisfactorily edited, the scope, nature, and vigor of their news reporting will be inevitably curtailed. Congress folded. Congress folded. I'm not going to get too involved with Watergate. That is Woodward and Bernstein, the real heroes of the Watergate saga. They were the foot soldiers who got the work done, but somebody had to say, yes, go ahead and do it. And those somebodies were Katharine Graham, the Washington Post. She was the publisher, and Ben Bradley, who was the executive editor of the Washington Post. They could have pulled it. They didn't. These guys made a convincing appeal to her, and she went with it. On June 19, 1972, Woodward and Bernstein revealed that one of the Watergate burglars, James McCourt, was a Republican operative. And there's Watergate, and that's me when I was 26 years old, and my wife said, let's take a picture in front of the Watergate. And there I am in front of the Watergate. Palin, 1972, ordered the shortening of a second installment of a two-part CBS evening news series with Walter Cronkite on Watergate after he was contacted by Charles Colson, an aide to the president, Dick Nixon. He ordered the banishment of instant analysis by his news people following presidential addresses. Palin's reporters took umbrage with what they believed was the censorship of their reporting in the Watergate piece and had traditionally enjoyed the ability to sway public opinion with their instant analysis following presidential addresses. There he is. Nixon compiled a list of press enemies and had them audited, including Dick Cavett, who said he was audited along with everybody who was working for the Dick Cavett show on ABC. He even mounted a campaign to yank the license of a television station owned by the Washington Post. No matter where you were at TV in those days, if you had a television license, you were making money, which broke the Watergate, Watergate scandal and published parts of the Pentagon Papers. That never happened. CBS News and 60 Minutes still has a pretty good reputation, despite a lot of stuff that they pulled that maybe they shouldn't have the reputation. This is Lowell Bergman, and my wife was friendly with his mother. His mother was Ellis Perlmutter, and she was still in Westchester County at the age of 97, and she was a house contractor. People wanted to take her driver's license away. She had to prove at the age of 97 she could still drive, and she could. So Lowell has a lot of bulldog in him, and it comes from his mother, Ellis Perlmutter. There is Lowell. In the 1980s, Lowell Bergman became a producer for CBS's 60 Minutes. But it was a story about big tobacco, later adapted for film, that made Bergman a star in his own right. 1993, Bergman received a box on his doorstep in Berkeley, California, sent anonymously. It contained internal documents from the tobacco company Philip Morris. For help with analyzing the material, Bergman contacted Jeffrey Wygant, a former head of research for the tobacco company Brown and Williamson. B&W fired Wygant and had him sign strict confidentiality agreements. While that meant Wygant couldn't talk to Bergman about his issues with B&W, 60 Minutes used him as a paid consultant for an investigative story about fire-safe cigarettes. Wygant eventually agreed to an exclusive interview with Bergman in 1995. The cover-up. The cover-up by CBS. CBS lawyers were hesitant about airing the story. Just a year before, 7 tobacco CEOs testified before Congress about the possible side effect of their company's products. All 7 said under oath they did not believe nicotine was addictive. Months later, the Justice Department opened a criminal investigation of the CEOs, charging them they had committed perjury. One of those CEOs was Andrew Tisch, the son of CBS chairman Lawrence Tisch. Okay, so you got this little element of the story. Then you got the other element. CBS and Westinghouse Electronic Corporation were in merger talks. If the $5.4 billion deal, more than $10.3 billion today, went through, top executives at CBS would make millions of dollars. The news outlet did not want to air The tobacco report for personal reasons, Bergman said, worried that a lawsuit by a tobacco company could jeopardize the merger. At one point, Bergman said, a CBS executive told him, the corporation will not risk its assets on this story, period. You're going to kill the story. By late 1995, though, CBS decided to air sanitized versions of the story, but without Weigandt's interview. Well, Lowell Bergman had friends in both high places and low places. High places like the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post. And somehow, some way, they got their hands on this story. Gee, I wonder how that works. I don't really know how it works, but it works. Anyway, the damage was done. CBS's credibility was in question. Bergman quit. The Weigand interview would be seen in 1996 after CBS was added. End of story, correct? No.
No.
The movie, The Insider. Anybody see the movie, The Insider?
Yes.
Well, there you go. Al Pacino and Russell Crowe. Bergman's investigation of the tobacco industry and the subsequent breakup with 60 Minutes were the basis of the 1999 film The Insider, starring Al Pacino and Russell Crowe as Weigand. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards. And that's not the end of it. There's Mike Wallace.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to tell you, you don't mind staying a couple minutes longer, do you? Okay. Charlie Osgood, the New York Press Club. Well, New York Press Club, this is before COVID and all, decides one night, we're going to honor Charlie. Charlie's retiring. Except we don't know when Charlie's retiring because we don't know when he's getting his knee replacement. But we decided, you know what, we'll honor him in March or April, knowing that he's going to get his knee replacement later on in the year. So Osgood's telling the story about Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace went to acting school. He went to acting school. And so Charlie is doing the CBS Evening News on a Saturday night. They stick him there because nobody is watching on Saturday night. But Mike Wallace was. And as soon as the program's over, there's a call. Osgood takes it, and it's Mike Wallace saying, get to my office after you're done at News Radio 88, after you're done your shift. Get to my office right away, and we need to talk. And Wallace says, I watched the show, and you look like the substitute school teacher. You think Mike Wallace, you think Walter Cronkite knows everything about every story he's doing? Of course he isn't. You gotta make believe, you gotta act that you know what you're doing, reading the news. And once you figure that out, it'll be easy. Mike Wallace was an actor. Mike Wallace went to acting school. Mike Wallace used to do cigarette commercials in the early day. He even hosted the pilot of the show To Tell the Truth. Art Linkletter wanted to be on 60 Minutes. And you had said to him, no, I don't know. Better talk to Paley about it, because Art Linkletter was doing People Are Funny and the other shows, and he wasn't really considered real serious. And Linkletter goes to Paley, and Paley says, no. And Linkletter says to Paley, but you got Mike Wallace on there. And he said, well, we rehabilitated Mike Wallace. Rehabilitated. Anyway, there is Mike Wallace. Bergman said his relationship with Mike Wallace and Don Ewart never recovered. The two bosses sided with CBS over the Weigand interview. At a journalism conference in 2000, Ewart denounced Bergman, saying he shouldn't be allowed within 100 miles of the newsroom. Within a year later, he called up Bergman supposedly to catch up. Bergman was busy and hung up. It was the last time they ever spoke. And Bergman resurfaced on PBS with Frontline. Anybody watch Frontline? Yeah, he resurfaced with Frontline. So apparently PBS said, we'll let him within 100 miles of the newsroom. How many of you remember the Janet Jackson Super Bowl?
Oh,
Sure.
Okay. I did a talk up in Ithaca, New York in March of 2004. And I asked, this was a sports business management class, and I asked them, who played in the Janet Jackson Super Bowl, which was only about 6 weeks earlier.
No, we remember.
They didn't remember. These were sports business management candidates.
Did they remember
They
her?
didn't. They remember her. I said, New England beat Carolina 32-29. Nobody remembers Super Bowl. Nobody remembers Super Bowls, really. Anyway, but they do remember this one. And that is Justin Timberlake, and that is Janet Jackson. Janet Jackson's costume malfunction at the halftime of the February 1st, 2004 game cost her ruckus and changed how TV and radio presented programming. ABC's showing of Saving Private Ryan was impacted. How many of you saw that movie?
Yes, it was.
Yeah, good movie?
Perfect.
Perfect movie? Well, this Super Bowl impacts it.
Oh.
How does a Super Bowl impact the showing of a movie which had been on before, which won a bunch of Academy Awards? Well, the FCC gets involved. Justin Timberlake grabbed Jackson in a dance routine accidentally, forcing her dress to open, which revealed one of her breasts. That 9/16 of a second left an impression. The eye does not work fast enough to see something 9/16 of a second. So how do you know, how did you see what you saw? Jackson performed a melody of hits, beginning with All of You, Rhythm Nation, and a brief excerpt of The Knowledge. Surprised guest Timberlake then appeared on stage to perform a duet of his song Rock Your Body with Jackson. As Timberlake reached the final line of Rock Your Body, Bet I'll Have You Naked by the end of the song, he pulled off Jackson's costume. The move revealed Jackson's right breast adorned by a sun-shaped nipple shield for less than a second. CBS immediately cut to a wide shot of the stage for a pyrotechnic event and then to an aerial shot of the Houston, Texas stadium. The internet started to buzz. There were only two social media, well, maybe three, but two of the main ones in those days was AOL Instant Messenger and Yahoo Messenger, and then Hotmail had a version of the Messenger as well. Okay, so the social media starts working, but somebody would say, "What'd you see?" Well, I didn't really see anything. How'd you see it? Have TiVo. Yeah, have TiVo. Slow down. Got the halftime show? Get it up.
Slow it down.
Slow it down. Slow it down. Slow it down. Slow. Voila, there's the one frame. It's one frame. That's it, one frame. Well, Republican politicians immediately pounced on the incident. Politicians derided Viacom CBS and the Viacom MTV unit, which produced a halftime show. Within 15 hours, lawmakers gathered on the steps of the Capitol in Washington, pointing a finger at Jackson and CBS for promoting something immoral. Oddly enough, they didn't mention Justin Timberlake at all. And he's the one who pulled it. But no, he wasn't there. Then the hammer came down on CBS. The Republican Federal Communications Commission majority got involved, fined Viacom CBS $550,000 and changed indecency rules. CBS Viacom fought the fines for 7 years and won. So how does that impact this? FCC raised the amount. Stations and networks could be docked for what could be termed as questionable images and dirty words. In 2004, television stations were scared off by the prospect of fines. 66 ABC TV affiliates, most of them in the South, did not show the movie Saving Private Ryan on Easter Sunday because of foul language concerns. TV stations didn't want to risk a fine. Saving Private Ryan had won 5 Academy Awards following the 1998 release. It had previously aired on ABC twice in 2001 and 2002. Military veterans groups were furious with the stations. Disney ABC offered to pay the fines in 66 stations if the FCC decided to dock it. There was one complaint in 2002 about the movie to the FCC, and the FCC ignored it. Timberlake's career was not impacted by the incident. Jackson's career floundered. In 2014, FCC Chairman Michael Powell, long after his term ended, said the incident was overblown. Now, remember what Frank Stanton said in 1971. That was then, this is now. Are they afraid of Trump?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
After being re-elected as President of the United States in November 2024, Donald Trump threatened to sue CBS because of an edited Kamala Harris interview. CBS settled with Trump. CBS's parent company wants to sell the company and needed government approval. Wonder how that works.
Yeah, right?
Okay, CBS changed the news policy in September 2025. See, I told you, I've been updating this like every day.
Exactly.
CBS News will now air unedited interviews on Face the Nation. The policy change came after Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem criticized the network for cutting 4 minutes out of her interview. What did Frank Stanton say in 1971? The Department of Homeland Security described the policy change as a victory.
Whoa.
You know what? They didn't have to do anything. They could have said, get out of here. But they didn't. Disney ABC News fired Terry Moran after he criticized Donald Trump on social media. Disney ABC paid Trump $16 million after Trump threatened to sue the company for defamation after George Stephanopoulos called Trump a sexual predator. He was just reading a transcript from the E. Jean Carroll trial.
Exactly.
What you got for the-
On September 10th, 2025, MSNBC fired Matthew Dowd, a former writer for George W. Bush, after the Charlie Kirk killing for inappropriate, insensitive, and unacceptable comments. Dowd speculated that Kirk's hateful thoughts and hateful words could have led to hateful actions. This is an opinion show, and he was fired for his opinion. The new blacklist? No. If you're friends, or if you want to do propaganda, it's all fine.
Right.
Jesse Waters. On September 14, 2025, Fox News Channel host Brian Kilmeade apologized for his idea of killing those who are unhoused and mentally ill a few days earlier. Give homeless lethal injections. Fox News kept Kilmeade after his I am sorry statement. September 23rd, I told you, keep updating this. September 23rd, 2025, during an episode of The Five on Fox News Channel, Jesse Waters joked that the U.S. should bomb or gas the United Nations headquarters in New York City.
Right.
This was in response to President Donald Trump having issues with an escalator and a teleprompter during his visit to the UN General Assembly. Fox did absolutely nothing to Jesse Waters. And Brendan Carr, the FCC chairman, said nothing. The new blacklist. On September 17, 2025, Jimmy Kimmel's late night talk show, Jimmy Kimmel Live, was suspended indefinitely by the ABC network. The suspension followed a controversial remark Kimmel made about the assassination of conservative activist Charlie Kirk. Kimmel commented on Donald Trump's handling of the situation. Remember, he was asked, how you holding up? And he said, I'm fine, and take a look at the ballroom we're building. That's while he was commenting on it. And criticized efforts to portray the killer as someone other than a supporter of the movement. Kimmel's show returned on September 23rd, 2025, after Disney was hit with a consumer boycott and pressure from both sides of the aisle, Rand Paul and Ted Cruz. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, Trump employee or appointee, condemned Kimmel's remarks in an interview, calling them truly sick and threatening FCC action against Kimmel, ABC, and parent company Disney. Carr once was a free speech advocate defending the First Amendment. Two of the biggest American television station owners, Nexstar Media Group, which owns Channel 11 in New York, and Sinclair Broadcast Group, which owned many local ABC affiliates, announced that they would pull the show from their stations indefinitely. They folded.
Right.
Because all of a sudden they said, oh my God, we're losing money. When money talks, nobody walks. The question of TV censorship and discussion of censorship became the top topic of cultural discussion. It's the FCC back in 1934. Live TV is not live. Stations broadcast live programs in a slight delay of usually less than 10 seconds to give them the ability to censor words or images while keeping the broadcast as live as possible. Cable TV is a subscription service, and the U.S. Supreme Court has recognized that cable TV and streaming services have more freedom to offer explicit content under the First amendment because viewers can access parental controls.
Right.
However, cable operators are still required to provide parental control devices upon request, but shouldn't swear on TV. And after Kimmel's monologue, have political satire on over-the-air TV. Any questions, any comments? It's your turn to talk.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
What TV channel or what newspaper is going to give us some